When planning a vacation or work trip, most Americans prioritize safety, convenience, and exciting experiences. However, not every country is an ideal destination, especially in 2024. With global unrest, political instability, and health risks on the rise, it's crucial to be aware of the places where American travelers might face significant challenges. Whether it's due to conflict, poor infrastructure, or a general anti-American sentiment, here are 10 countries Americans should think twice about before visiting in 2024. But wait, before we dive fully into this, take 2 seconds and subscribe to this channel so you don't miss out on our future amazing content, and hit the like button. 1. Afghanistan. Afghanistan remains one of the most dangerous countries in the world for Americans, especially since the Taliban took full control in 2021. The Taliban regime operates with strict, oppressive rules, and many basic rights that were once protected have been rolled back. For American travelers, Afghanistan in 2024 presents extreme dangers due to ongoing political instability, where various armed groups, including extremist organizations, are actively engaging in violence. Bombings, terrorist attacks, and clashes between government forces and rebel groups happen regularly, and these situations often put civilians in harm's way. Moreover, Afghanistan's infrastructure is severely crippled. Hospitals, schools, roads, and emergency services are either non-functional or unavailable in many parts of the country. This makes it almost impossible for foreign travelers to receive help if they encounter danger or fall ill. Kidnapping for ransom is also a common threat, especially for Americans, who are often targeted by extremist groups looking to gain leverage or money. Due to the lack of effective law enforcement and military presence in many areas, there is little protection available. In 2024, Americans should avoid Afghanistan at all costs, as even well-prepared travelers would struggle to find resources or assistance in case of an emergency. 2. North Korea. North Korea is one of the most secretive and tightly controlled countries in the world, which makes it incredibly difficult and dangerous for outsiders, especially Americans, to visit. The regime, led by Kim Jong-un, enforces extreme measures to keep its population isolated from the rest of the world, and visitors must adhere to strict rules at all times. American citizens are especially scrutinized, given the history of poor diplomatic relations between North Korea and the United States. For travelers, even a minor misunderstanding or an innocent mistake can lead to serious consequences, including being detained or arrested. There have been several instances in the past where American visitors were imprisoned for taking photos in restricted areas or for perceived disrespect towards the government. In some cases, detainees have been used as political pawns, further heightening the risk. Furthermore, the lack of communication with the outside world means that if an emergency arises, whether legal trouble, a health crisis, or any other issue, help is not easily accessible. Embassies or consular support are virtually non-existent for American citizens in North Korea. In 2024, visiting North Korea as an American poses an incredibly high risk, not only due to the regime's unpredictable nature, but also because of heightened tensions. The risk of imprisonment, harsh punishments, or worse, is simply not worth the potential dangers that come with stepping into this isolated dictatorship. 3. Syria. Syria has been in a state of civil war since 2011, and in 2024, the country is still grappling with the aftermath of over a decade of brutal conflict. The ongoing fighting between different rebel groups, government forces, and terrorist organizations like ISIS has left much of the country in ruins. For American travelers, Syria is an extremely high-risk destination. Many parts of the country are controlled by militant groups that are hostile to Westerners, especially Americans, who may be seen as political targets. One of the most pressing concerns for visitors is the absence of law and order in large swaths of the country. Many areas are essentially lawless, meaning that criminals, extremist groups, and rogue militias operate freely. For a foreigner, especially an American, this is a terrifying scenario, as there's a high chance of being kidnapped or caught in violent attacks. Additionally, Syria's infrastructure has been severely damaged. Roads, bridges, airports, and hospitals have been destroyed, making it difficult for travelers to move around safely or access basic necessities. With the U.S. Embassy in Syria being closed since 2012, there is no reliable way for Americans to get consular assistance if they run into trouble. This leaves them vulnerable, with little support in case of emergencies. Even humanitarian organizations working in Syria urge extreme caution due to the unpredictability of the ongoing conflict. In 2024, Syria remains a country that Americans should avoid at all costs, as the risks far outweigh any potential reason to visit. 4. Yemen. Yemen has been stuck in a terrible civil war for several years now, and the situation there just keeps getting worse. The fighting started as a conflict between the Yemeni government and a group called the Houthi rebels. But over time, it has dragged in other groups and countries, turning the entire place into a war zone. One of the biggest problems in Yemen is that the war has destroyed almost everything people need to survive. Food, medicine, and clean water are extremely hard to find, leading to widespread hunger and disease. In fact, Yemen is facing one of the worst humanitarian crises in the world. Hospitals are struggling, roads are broken or unsafe, and even basic services like electricity and clean water are not available in most parts of the country. For Americans, visiting Yemen in 2024 is extremely dangerous. There is the constant risk of getting caught up in fighting, and there are also terrorist groups operating in different areas. Americans are especially at risk of being kidnapped or targeted in attacks because of the political tensions and anti-Western sentiment in parts of the country. Without stable infrastructure or any reliable emergency services, getting help in a crisis would be nearly impossible. In short, Yemen is a place where violence is common, basic survival is difficult, and the risks far outweigh any possible reasons to visit. 5. Haiti. Haiti has always had its fair share of struggles, but in recent years, things have gone from bad to worse. This small Caribbean nation has been dealing with a mix of political instability, economic hardship, and natural disasters like earthquakes and hurricanes. However, in 2024, the biggest threat to anyone visiting Haiti, especially Americans, comes from the gangs that control large parts of the country. These gangs operate without much interference, and violent crime has become a daily reality. Kidnappings have become especially common, and foreigners, particularly Americans, are seen as valuable targets for ransom. The situation is so bad that even local police forces have a hard time maintaining order, and the government itself is weak and unstable. The U.S. government has repeatedly warned travelers about the risks of going to Haiti, and this advice hasn't changed for 2024. Even though Haiti has a rich culture and beautiful landscapes, the level of violence, combined with the crumbling infrastructure, makes it a highly dangerous place to visit. With a poor economy, corrupt leadership, and few working public services, there's no guarantee of safety for tourists. In such a volatile environment, it's wise for Americans to steer clear of Haiti until the situation improves. Oh wait, I know you like this video already. Go ahead right now and show me some love by hitting the like button. Done. Let's continue. 6. Somalia. Somalia has been a dangerous place for many years, and unfortunately, it doesn't look like 2024 will bring any improvements. This East African nation has been dealing with constant violence and instability, mostly due to the presence of extremist groups like Al-Shabaab. These groups are known for carrying out terrorist attacks and frequently target foreigners, including Americans. In addition to the threat of terrorism, piracy along the Somali coast has also been a major issue. Pirates regularly hijack ships and take hostages, and this threat extends to those traveling by sea near Somalia. The central government in Somalia struggles to control much of the country, meaning large areas are essentially lawless. This makes it difficult for tourists to travel safely, as there is no functioning police force or reliable system to help if something goes wrong. Kidnappings are common, as are attacks on vehicles, and Americans are often targeted due to perceived wealth or political reasons. To make matters worse, Somalia lacks the basic services tourists rely on, such as functioning hospitals, safe roads, or consular assistance. In 2024, visiting Somalia presents a serious risk to anyone, and Americans are strongly advised to avoid traveling there due to the high likelihood of violence, kidnapping, and terrorism. 7. Iran. Iran is a country rich in culture, with breathtaking historical sites, stunning architecture, and deep traditions that stretch back thousands of years. However, despite its beauty, Iran is not a particularly safe destination for Americans in 2024. The relationship between Iran and the United States has been tense for many years, especially since the 1979 Iranian Revolution. These tensions have made Iran a hostile environment for U.S. citizens. The Iranian government is highly suspicious of foreigners, especially Americans, and there have been several cases where American visitors were arrested under accusations of spying or committing political crimes. For instance, Americans traveling to Iran have been detained for months or even years under charges that are often politically motivated. These situations can be terrifying because, in many cases, visitors are denied access to legal help, and diplomacy between the U.S. and Iran is so strained that resolving these issues can take a long time. In addition, the Iranian government has strict rules about social behavior and attire, which Americans may not be familiar with, increasing the risk of inadvertently breaking the law. With anti-Western sentiment growing, any minor mistake could lead to serious consequences, such as being detained or harassed by authorities. In 2024, these risks make Iran an unsafe place for American tourists. 8. Venezuela. Venezuela was once known for its natural beauty, vibrant cities, and friendly people. It attracted tourists from all over the world. However, the country's situation has drastically changed due to years of political unrest and economic collapse. Today, Venezuela is struggling with extreme poverty, hyperinflation, and widespread shortages of basic necessities like food, medicine, and fuel. This economic crisis has led to widespread crime, and violence has become a daily part of life for many Venezuelans. Armed robbery, kidnapping, and assault are common in both cities and rural areas. For Americans, the situation is even more dangerous. Because of political tension between the U.S. and Venezuela, Americans are often seen as wealthy targets, and criminals may assume that they are carrying valuable items. Kidnapping for ransom is a serious threat, especially in areas where law enforcement is weak or non-existent. The Venezuelan government is struggling to maintain control, and there are frequent protests, clashes, and riots in major cities, which can quickly become violent. Hospitals are underfunded and barely functioning, so if an emergency happens, it's unlikely that you will receive adequate medical care. With such high levels of instability, Venezuela should be avoided by American travelers in 2024. 9. Mali. Mali is a country in West Africa with a rich cultural history and beautiful landscapes, but it has become one of the most dangerous places for American travelers in recent years. The rise of extremist groups, including affiliates of Al-Qaeda and ISIS, has made parts of the country extremely unsafe. These groups frequently target foreigners, including tourists, for kidnappings, and there have been numerous cases where travelers have been held hostage for ransom or worse. This makes Mali a very risky destination, especially for Americans who could be seen as valuable targets by these extremist organizations. Additionally, Mali's political situation is highly unstable. Since the military coup in 2021, the country has been struggling with weak governance, and the central government has little control over large parts of the country. The northern and central regions, in particular, are largely controlled by armed militias and terrorist groups, making them extremely dangerous. Roads are unsafe, and there are frequent reports of attacks on vehicles and kidnappings along key routes. In 2024, the lack of security, combined with the presence of terrorist groups and weak government control, makes Mali a country Americans should avoid, as the risk of violence or abduction is simply too high. 10. Russia. Russia has always been a complex and powerful country, but recent events have made it a difficult and unsafe destination for Americans. In 2022, Russia invaded Ukraine, leading to a war that has caused a huge global impact. This invasion didn't just affect Ukraine. It has worsened relationships between Russia and many Western countries, especially the United States. As of 2024, the situation between Russia and the U.S. is still very tense, and that tension affects American travelers. One of the biggest problems Americans face in Russia is anti-American sentiment, which means many Russians don't view Americans in a positive light anymore. The government's strict control over the country means that if something goes wrong, like a legal issue or an arrest, Americans could face serious consequences, including unfair imprisonment. Unfortunately, there have been cases where Americans were detained on shaky grounds, and when relations between the two countries are already bad, it makes resolving such issues even harder. Russia has also been hit with many sanctions from the U.S. and its allies, meaning many businesses and banks have cut ties with the country. This makes it tough for travelers to handle basic things like banking, internet access, or using international services. Legal challenges are also more complicated due to these strained diplomatic relations, so if an American finds themselves in trouble, the U.S. Embassy may have limited ability to help. Furthermore, with the ongoing war and heavy media propaganda, it's hard for outsiders to know what's really happening in Russia. The unpredictable nature of the political climate makes it even more dangerous for Americans. For these reasons, whether for business or a vacation, it's safer for Americans to stay away from Russia in 2024. The risks of getting caught up in legal or political problems, along with the possibility of personal safety issues, are simply too high. In conclusion, the world is a big and fascinating place, but it's also full of risks and dangers that need to be considered carefully, especially in 2024. There are countries where Americans may face serious threats to their safety due to wars, political conflicts, or even anti-American sentiment, while places like Russia, North Korea, and Afghanistan may have their own unique histories and cultures. The risks they pose to travelers cannot be ignored. For American travelers, the best strategy is to stay informed and prioritize safety over adventure. It's always a good idea to check the latest travel advisories from the U.S. State Department before planning any international trips. Researching the destination thoroughly, knowing the current political situation, and being aware of the risks can help avoid dangerous situations. The world may be full of places to explore, but it's better to choose locations where peace, safety, and stability are prioritized, ensuring a safe and enjoyable journey. If you enjoyed this video and want to learn more about international affairs and cultural dynamics, don't forget to hit that like button and subscribe to World Culture Diaries. Thanks for watching, and see you next time.